Hello again, everybody, and we're back, and we're gonna do another bit. We'll see how long I feel like going of brick by brick, movie Bob's Magnum Opus, the greatest book ever written, the Mein Kampf of the 21st century, the book that I don't know launched 1,000 spurgs or something like that, but we're gonna keep going through some more of this, and it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a lot of fun. We've almost gotten to the actual book. We're about a quarter of the way through. We haven't actually gotten to brick by brick yet. We actually haven't gotten to him talking about him going through Super Mario Brothers 3. But I hope you guys are ready because that part is going to be key now. And by that I mean no, it isn't. It's gonna be atrocious. It's going to be unwatchably bad. You have no conception of what's about to come. But no, people I think have been enjoying this, and that's good. When you smile, the world smiles with you, or whatever the fuck that meme is. Okay, let's see here. All right, let me just share this. All right. All right, so Revolution. I forget if we where we started or where did we end finish off. Jeez, I should have looked this up before I started this stream, but it is what it is. In the words of the great philosopher of our time, Darkside Phil, it is what it is. Nothing I can do, but I digress. Let me see. Oh no, this is where we left off. Okay, that's where we left off exactly. Okay, so let's begin.
Revolution. My reborn gaming habit had been focused almost exclusively on handhelds, so I hadn't been paying much attention outside of work to the console scene. I knew the Xbox 360 and PS3 were en route and set to muck up the HD DVD Blu-ray war that was already making a mess of my job, and I knew that Nintendo had a new console codenamed Revolution. But by now everyone knew the score on that front, maybe a new Mario and Zelda game, but otherwise Nintendo consoles were passé. Nothing exciting to see here. Especially since, as late as two.
Let's see. Jim Can Swim says was just watching the VOD here. Stay that I missed. Glad to see we got a bit more to go. Oh, we're only a quarter of the way through this
As
book, man.
2005, they still hadn't settled on a name for the thing and would only reveal that it would reinvent gameplay in some ill-defined way. Reinvented gameplay turned out to mean a simplified, motion-sensing controller. Introduced as a Wii remote around the same time we learned that the final system would be called the Nintendo Wii. It had become customary, routine even, for new game consoles to primarily tout their numbers: size of onboard memory, speed of processor, size of chips, 53. Super Mario Bros. 3, brick by brick and boards, etc. But the Wii came out.
Once again, if you guys want me to speed it up, slow it down the reading, raise or lower the volume, let me know. I try to do it based on what I think people want, but it's people I find will say like my videos are too quiet when I will like have put them out and they seem okay to me at like 20% of volume or something. So it depends a lot on your hardware. Also, I'm just incompetent, so.
Came out touting unique features like consoles used to do back in the days of blast processing and turbo buttons. Along with motion controls, Nintendo was touting the Mii's, mini avatars of the player that could be inserted into games, and a virtual console for downloading older classic games, both things considered routine now but quietly revolutionary at the time. The mainstream of gaming culture, of course, turned up its noses. Silly gimmicks. Nintendo? Nintendo was weary and out of touch. They didn't know how to compete in the modern gaming market. The system itself was graphically underpowered, and the motion sensing gimmick was a tack-headed trifle to make it appear worth owning. How could it be anything else when the remote, resembling an Apple-esque version of an NES controller when turned on its side, was so clearly not designed for the multiplayer, online first?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. So the Wii came out. I think I forget what year it was when I was in high school. Actually, I had gotten my tonsils out. Oh no, my wisdom teeth out. So I got to stay home for like a couple days and play Twilight Princess. The Switch controller is garbage. I mean, it's okay to admit that now, all these years later. But no, the Switch controllers is awful. The motion controls I don't think are very good. It was briefly kind of exciting, but I remember I started to hate it almost immediately. Just how unresponsive it was, how it just didn't work very well, in my humble opinion.
First-person shooters that had become the only game genre that mattered over the previous half-decade. This was the consensus, expressed loudly in the gamer culture and in more muted tones in the gaming press. Of course, the story of not just how wrong but how spectacularly wrong that consensus turned out to be doesn't need to be rehashed here. Traditional game culture was skeptical and resistant to the Wii, but
In retrospect, I don't think it actually was, because the Wii was a massive success, but the Wii U, which was like their attempt to build off of the previous one, was a complete and total disaster. But then we have the Hegelian synthesis that is the Switch, where Nintendo brought together their mobile console and their home console together and combined all the good features of both of them. And now you have a console that has a good game library, a very robust online thing, lots of aftermarket stuff. I think the Switch is really good. I think the Switch is kind of the apotheosis of everything that the other people did.
but the moment the general public got a look at Wii Sports, essentially a pack-in game designed as a tech demo for motion controls, the system was an immediate, massive success. Stock flew from shelves, and customers lined up in droves. The sales numbers climbed so high so quickly it soon became a statistical impossibility that any other machine of that generation would end up selling better. In the decade I ultimately spent working in retail, I never experienced anything like it. The Wii was a full-blown phenomena, captivating not just the gaming world but the rest of the popular.
By the way, I just sign on. It's funny how Kurzweil reads "we was," because it sounds like "we was kegs." We was Nintendo.
Popular culture to a degree that hadn't been seen since, well, since the debut of the NES 2 decades earlier. As much as hardcore gaming would continue to deny it, all of a sudden Nintendo was back. But not necessarily the Nintendo I'd known early on.
So I will say, at least after GameCube, Nintendo's kind stopped having a lot of the more adult or mature games, or like the big AAA releases. That is true to a certain extent. A lot of like most of the SMT games, for instance, came out on DS. You had a whole bunch of other re-releases on DS and stuff like that. So you had a lot of like very hardcore niche JRPGs. You had like Metal Gear Solid 3. There's a lot of DS stuff that came out.
Early on, it felt to me as though Nintendo wasn't just looking to bypass what was then the mainstream of the gaming market to appeal to a broader audience but also to bypass their own devout fanbase. The Wii was a major attempt at rebranding, and part of that process seemed to be getting away from their known stature as primarily
Also, this filthy peasant doesn't even mention Fire Emblem. So, yeah.
primarily a delivery system for Mario, Pokemon, and Zelda titles. Wii Sports featured no licensed characters, and while the system did launch with some familiar faces ready to go in the form of Super Paper Mario and Zelda, Twilight Princess, the lack of a major Mario title stood out particularly since the GameCube's Big Mario entry, Sunshine, 54, Bob
I never got into Super Paper Mario. I just.
Chipman had been received as an admirable but not entirely successful experiment. Was that to be the end, then? Was Mario to go the way of Mickey Mouse, star of the company in name only? mascot emeritus, relegated to cheerleading for the new stars from the sidelines? Waving to the kids and their parents, or their grandparents, who might be old enough to recall when he was the reason people came to the park, as they dashed by on their way to the hot new ride based on the hot new franchise. Were the Wii and its iconic Mii's detached enough not only from traditional game culture?
Okay, the Mii's were shit. Can we all just like agree that the Mii's sucked? They looked horrible. There wasn't that many games that used them. Ugh.
Culture and even the Nintendo legacy itself that they'd now subsist on their own? The idea of it seemed fairly plausible to me, and filled me with a sense of impending ironic dread. Nintendo makes the big comeback I'd wanted for them, but wind up in a form that in no way resembled my memory of them? And with no Mario? It would, I imagined, fit my luck at that time. I was wrong, to the stars.
So, because the Castlevania Dominus pack came out, definitely recommend it. That is the three DS Castlevania games. So that is Dawn of Sorrow, Order of Ecclesia, and Portrait of Ruin. All three are really good. Order of Ecclesia is a bit hard for me, but I digress. Um, just looking at how much nicer the interface is now than it used to be, Nintendo's grown a lot as a company. I will give them that.
One of the quirks that accompanies Shigeru Miyamoto's position as an elder statesman of game development is that he holds the prioritization of interface, read, gameplay, above any other aspect of the process. No matter how much graphics improve, or how much the industry, and the audience, comes to prize narrative or visual innovation, one gets the distinct sense that he generally doesn't want to do a game, even one starring his own creations, without the opportunity to try some new technique or fresh idea in the process. His penchant for canceling, upending, or drastically reworking entire projects when a new idea strikes his fancy are the stuff of industry legends. He's said to have called the development team on a then experimental SNES spaceship combat title from his own honeymoon and told them to change the game's power-up mechanism to diving under arches and to make the lead character an anthropomorphic cartoon fox. His reasoning? He had just wed in a traditional Shinto ceremony, which involves passing beneath an arched walkway en route to standing before a statue of the fox-like god Amaterasu.
Okay, Shigeru Miyamoto is really based, apparently. That's cool.
Amaterasu. The finished game, Star Fox, would become a bestseller and kick off yet another beloved franchise for Nintendo. In the time that the Wii...
When was the last time we had a Star Fox game? It seems like Star Fox very seldom comes out. Like maybe one a generation. I actually didn't mind Star Fox Assault. Star Fox Assault was kind of fun.
That the Wii was still only in the planning stages of becoming a console sales juggernaut, Miyamoto's new fancy was to create a 3D platformer where manipulating and negotiating shifting forces of gravity was the main obstacle to completing levels and solving puzzles. And so it was decided that Mario would now travel to outer space. The space-bound setting of Super Mario Galaxy may have started out. 55. Super Mario Bros. 3. Brick by brick as a way to visually and narratively explain Miyamoto's desire for gravity-fixated physics, but it turned out to be an ingenious way around what had become the nagging problem of platforming in 3D. The jump and dodge gameplay that had defined the majority of the Mario series existed because hurdles and chasms were the only forms of geographic obstacle one could place in on a path that could only be traversed from left or right. But being able to move in all directions through fully realized worlds can't help but limit the necessity of Mario's signature moveset. The more exploration-oriented Super Mario 64 had piled on the new innovations to accommodate this, but by the time Sunshine rolled around it was more than clear that Mario was built for jumping and stomping first, and everything else second by a good distance. By moving the action to a version of outer space that was inspired less by science fiction than it was by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry's The Little Prince, with Mario traversing comically tiny planetoids and hitching a ride on Shooting Stars Galaxy, allowed the series to evolve into a kind of absolute extreme version of the platforming ideal. Mario leaps from platform to platform above a literal black abyss on a path that is almost always fairly linear, even if such straightforward
By the way, I think I'm gonna get the new Zelda game that's coming out. The one where you actually play as Zelda. Was it called Force of Wisdom or something? I that actually looks pretty good. I probably will actually get that.
Even if such straightforwardness is cleverly hidden by visual panache, that back to the beginning, but better approach was punctuated by the revival of classic elements like old-school
Echoes of Wisdom. I'll probably actually get that.
enemies, SMB3 style suits for power-ups, comic, from Yoshi's Island, making his return, and the 3D debut of the Fire Flower. All punctuated by a bravura opening sequence wherein the Mushroom Kingdom is blown almost to ruin by Bowser's new fleet of SMB3 style airships. I remember the first time I saw that part, presented as an E3 trailer for the game. It was like revisiting a memory and, for a change, having it feel better with the passage of time. That same sequence also introduces the first and most intriguing new element to the Mario canon to come along in possibly ever. We learn that the Mushroom Kingdom celebrates a kind of high holy day around the appearance of a specific comet, which turns out to actually house the spaceship observatory of Rosalina, an enigmatic figure who behaves very much like a kind of goddess and serves as mother to extraterrestrial beings who grow up to become stars and planets. That observation ultimately became the second episode of the Game Over Thinker, which I'll speak to momentarily. Super Mario Galaxy became a critical darling, the best reviewed Mario title in years, and one of the Wii's biggest sellers. Though, perhaps tellingly, not quite as big as Wii Sports or the group family-oriented Mario Kart Wii.
Speaking of big, um, I think it's like when you play the game, it's probably not immediately recognizable, but Rosalina is really, really tall. I think she's like 7 or 8 feet tall. If you actually look at it. Um, she's kind of gigantic, which, I mean, Rosalina. Let me see here. Let me see. Does it? I'm seeing if there's one for her from if she's that tall in Mario Tennis as well, but yeah, she is. She's huge.
Wii. Still, it did well enough for Nintendo and Miyamoto to take the uncommon 56 Bob Chipman step of greenlighting an immediate, direct sequel based on the same engine, making 2010's Super Mario Galaxy 2 the first direct successor installment in the series since the original Japanese SMB2. The Calling. In 2008 I was spending a lot of time online, re-engaged with a gaming community that in many ways not only didn't resemble the one I recalled but seemed openly hostile to it, a mirror image that hated its own original subject. The feeling of inclusiveness that I remembered, perhaps in rose-colored exaggeration, born from gaming culture and nerd culture having originated as one and the same and thus sympathetic to misfits and the socially oppressed, had been replaced by a culture of bullying, a crude, cruel horde dedicated to shunning not only the old iconography of gaming but any attempt to build a new one beyond.
So basically, Movie Bob. Okay, so as far as I can tell this story, Movie Bob was a complete loser as a kid. Um, he briefly got some pleasure in life when he got his NES. He started to play Mario. Then the wizard came out, and very briefly, for like 2 days, he was happy as people respected him and they wanted his super game knowledge. Then immediately after that, Sega Genesis came out, and it was the end of his life. He also found out that Mario was actually not from Brooklyn, but he was from the Mushroom Kingdom, and that triggered a crisis to him. And now here he's having like his big return. He had that loser period where he got his degree in film school and it didn't go anywhere. He was the co-host on that video game, that movie review show that he completely fucked up and got fired from because he attacked Jesus. Um, there was a thing about how he would like sit in his car until late at night playing DS games because his parents were ashamed of him and didn't want him to come home. And now he's like very briefly he's happy again for like one day, and then he goes to the online gaming community.
Beyond the borders of the online multiplayer military shooter culture that had come to dominate. Whereas I'd recalled the culture that flaunted its own pseudo-multiculturalism given the sheer volume of the medium that came from the alien culture of Japan, I now found a rabidly xenophobic culture that would not only happily purge the weird Eastern influences of the past but also resisted the injection of any perspective that didn't align with that of a white heterosexual middle-class male. I was told in
Oh, it's so cringe. Dude, oh. I wish this is really like this is when he knew that like he had to do something. It's like, look, there's these games and they're made for like white heterosexual males or Japan or Asian heterosexual males or just heterosexual males in general. Like they can't be made for that. They have to be made for women. I mean, there is a subsection of games that was made for women. Um which have always been popular with women. A lot of RPGs have a lot of social games, stuff like Animal Crossing. Uh, I remember the girls I used to know back in university were obsessed with Fire Emblem, Pokemon, and Harvest Moon. So I mean, there's always been a lot of games that have appealed to girls. The issue with modern gaming is it's not that it doesn't appeal to boys or to girls, it doesn't appeal to anybody. It's like the target market is like cat ladies who don't play video games. The target market is like SJWs who don't like it. It's specifically that they hate it. Like they it's just, and now he's like, oh, I thought gaming was my safe space to be um a total freak. I mean, I do remember back then, and people were dicks back then. That was back when a lot of Chads were more involved with gaming because of like Halo and stuff, and they could be pretty abrasive. But it's just, I don't know. People are just really, really sensitive. There was kind of a rivalry between like the Milsim guys and the Milsim guys and the like more uh Japanese RPG story driven guys. Like this is when Puronage was coming out, and that talked a lot about the different subcultures within gaming. But this is just him being a bitch because that's what he is. I mean, would any community accept Movie Bob? He's a freak of nature.
told in feverish, excited terms that gaming had matured, but from my perspective it had merely aged. And even then only into adolescence. The childlike, and, yes, occasionally childish, innocence of gamer culture I remembered had morphed into the persona of an ignorant, hormone-fueled, it-driven teenage boy, violently resentful of women, fiercely protective of privilege, eager to prove machismo, and utterly
Oh, this is so cringe. Oh. Yeah, this you can tell this was right before Gamergate.
contemptible. Of course, this culture despised the we representing as it did a fusion of all that they sought not to be, a group activity where they cultivated detachment, colorful and exuberant where they prized darkness and edginess, and inherently foreign. It was easily the most proudly Japanese feeling trend American families had happily adopted since the suburban koi pun, where they'd come to worship the digital age version of American muscle.
So that was the why the Wii wasn't a bigger success, guys. It wasn't that the hardware was underpowered. It wasn't that the motion controllers sucked. It wasn't that they didn't release enough games for it. The reason that the Wii failed was because people are racist. That the Wii was too Japanese. But once again, like as we're going through all this, keep in mind the best-selling console of all time is the DS. If you were to combine the 3DS and the DS, it sold more than the PlayStation 3 too. So clearly that wasn't the issue. The issue was that they just didn't release a lot of good games for the Wii. Like, we didn't get a mainline Pokemon title for the Wii. We got Pokemon XD. No, that was for GameCube. Like, we didn't get like Pokemon White or Black or whatever. It was just, yeah.
I ended up dumping my frustrations with what the medium and its public face had become crystallized by the reveal that the lead of the rebooting Bionic Commando franchise was to be transformed into yet another scowling, stubble-bearded lunk of a Wolverine knockoff into a YouTube video about the declining standard of character design in games. I wound up titling it Game Over Thinker, Episode 1 A Matter of Character, 57, Super Mario Bros. 3. Brick by brick at the end, when I got a vague sense that I wound up having more to say and could maybe turn this into a series. I wound up doing a handful more episodes, which earned a tiny but loyal following on the tubes, but never did I entertain any serious thoughts of becoming the next Angry Nerd or the next Yahtzee Croshaw. Boy, that'd be cool though, huh? Thoughts, on the other hand, were of course common, though I did fire off a "hey, look at this" link to the original to ScrewAttack.com, the Texas-based site that had famously discovered Rolf's AVGN series. Enough time went by that I honestly forgot that I'd even sent it. Until one day I noticed that the viewer numbers had exploded all at once on YouTube. ScrewAttack had posted the first TGO episode to its front page, and suddenly my YouTube channel, my email, and the blog I'd set up to promote the series were inundated with new visitors.
It was like the second or third happy time in Movie Bob's life.
Visitors. My videos were being posted to blogs and feeds across the web, and all at once the Game Over Thinker went from being one of my hobbies to being a thing I was now in charge of. Sudden fame, even of a type I wasn't really able to monetize in any way, was quite a thing. But I could not have been prepared for what happened next. Out of the blue, I got an email from EscapistMagazine.com, the games journalism outfit that had discovered zero punctuation. They'd seen my stuff on YouTube, I'd started posting movie reviews as well, just for fun, and wanted me to join the team. At first, I thought they'd be looking to pick up Game Over Thinker, but it turned out they were actually looking to expand their horizons. They wanted a film critic. Holy shit. After a few test runs to iron out the kinks, I officially joined the team as the Escapist movie critic, hosting my own series Escape to the Movies. In the exact same time period, ScrewAttack offered me the chance to enter Overthinker in an audience voting competition to become an official part of that site. I won, and the partnership endures to this day. Both of these
Okay, so Game Over Thinker episode 1 has 217,000 views, which is respectable. Game Over Thinker 2 has 100,000, and then it hovers around 100,000 for quite some time until it drops to about 20,000 in the most recent episodes. Well, not recent episodes. He stopped doing this a while back. Okay, the more recent ones get like 5,000 views. So that's his series.
These developments could not have come at a better time. In my real work life, I'd finally surrendered to take on a soul-sucking data entry job. Grim irony, my assignment was to process the employee termination paperwork of various large corporations. That job didn't last. I was fired for, frankly, not being very good at it, and I segued off into another part-time retail job, working the cappuccino counter at a Borders Books.
Like, he's been fired. He got fired from Blockbuster twice. He got fired from Best Buy, I think. And now he's getting fired from, like, a shitty data entry job.
Books. But now I had a real career to build on the side and hopefully jump off onto full-time. Bob Chipman, movie Bob, film critic and video game culture commentator. ScrewAttack even flew me down to Texas to speak at their 58 Bob Chipman Big Convention, along with web superstars like James AVG and Rolf, Noah Spoony Antweiler, and Brent Offloss. Was this really happening? Peace in our time. I wasn't the only one going through the end of an era and an exciting new beginning. The so-called console wars that had in part created the once problematic identity which Nintendo had now re-embraced a thunderous
Uh-oh, we have problematic.
success. The Disney of video games versus Sega's edgy upstart had long since abated. However, their history remained a vital memory for both the industry and gamers, even fans who would have been too young, or not have existed at all, to have witnessed the war had managed to absorb, through pop cultural osmosis, the idea that for some reason Sonic the Hedgehog and the Super Mario Bros. Were enemies or, at the very least, they weren't friends. In 2007, this last cultural remnant of the console wars was put to rest. Gamers may have dreamed of seeing Mario and Sonic team up.
It's like the final settlement. I forget what was the name of the treaty that ultimately finished World War II. Final settle. Okay, treaty on the final settlement with respect to Germany, which was signed in 1990 as part of the two, or otherwise known as the 2+4 agreement. So that was the treaty on the final settlement with respect to Mario and Sonic.
Up, or fight. In some kind of grand game devoted solely to that event, perhaps a mix and match of their respective game styles, but whatever anyone had in mind, few could have predicted the out-of-the-blue announcement in 2007 of a Mario-Sonic crossover in the form of an Olympics-themed mini-games collection. If nothing else, Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games was an above-average game of its type, but however noteworthy and nifty it was to see the two icons standing together, the game wasn't quite the climax the iconic rivalry might have deserved in the eyes of many. That would come later. Now that's more like it. Nicely characterized the reaction of gamers to the subsequent news that Sonic would appear alongside Mario, and everyone else, in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, the Wii installment of the mascot fighting game that had become one of Nintendo's biggest series in the GameCube era. In addition to its famous multiplayer mode, Brawl featured a single-player story mode that placed the game's roster of classic characters in a side-scrolling platformer adventure through what could only be called an orgy of retro gaming fanservice titled The Subspace Emissary. In the final moments of the game, when players face off against a mysterious final villain named Tabu, none other than Sonic the Hedgehog appears out of nowhere to mortally wound the enemy, and unlock himself as a playable character, and allow for the story to conclude. To say that playing through Subspace Emissary was close to a religious 59 Super Mario Bros. 3 brick-by-brick experience for me in general. Link meets Yoshi. R.O.B. Stormtroopers. Kirby blowing up Bowser and Ganondorf's giant space cannon. Would be putting it mildly, but even after that, seeing Mario and Sonic together in a real game and able to fight one another, no less, felt more like real, genuine closure than it had any right to for a grown man. Thus, at long last ended the rivalry of Mario and Sonic, one-time enemies of the Golden Age, now united as avatars of said age as it fights against its own fating. And thus far keeps winning.
Wow. Super Smash Brothers Brawl, the Subspace Emissary, was a religious experience for Movie Bob. It was once again like one of the few moments of his life where he was actually happy. Once again, he was in his mid to late 20s at the time this came out. This is like, I think Base Caulfield said this was like the most Gen X thing they've ever read, which I think is probably it's probably accurate, but it's, yeah.
And so we come to the present. Or at least close enough. In 2009, Nintendo released New Super Mario Bros. Wii, a console-sized update of the NSMB formula from handhelds with one key difference: 1 to 4 player cooperative multiplayer. It looked, at first, like a quaint symbolic gesture, a fusion of the Wii's party gaming soul with Golden Age nostalgia. Nintendo and Mario's two audiences made one. Sure, there were some quibbles to be had. It's kind of lame that players 3 and 4 have to be a pair of palette swap toads rather than the two princesses, Or even Toad and Todd Ed, but it was.
No, like it's. I like the Subspace Emissary too. Don't get me wrong. I played through that game. I enjoyed Brawl a lot. I'm just saying, I don't think this is sarcasm. I don't think this is him like role playing or exaggerating. I think like it literally was a religious experience to him. Playing through it.
But it was a marked improvement over its DS predecessor in challenge and polish, and it featured the return of not only Yoshi but the Koopalings too. I bought it. I enjoyed it. In fact, playing it got me through what felt very much like an intermittently overstressful holiday season that year. And I sort of figured that was that. Retro platformers, after all, were a niche genre especially on consoles, but then everyone else bought it. Everyone, in a turn that I would love to have seen coming. NSMBWII turned out to be one of the biggest releases ever on the system. It wasn't just retro gamers and nostalgic fanboys buying it. It was kids, parents, families. The side-scrolling Super Mario Bros. Formula was as addictive as ever, and now its new multiplayer form had pulled a whole new generation, and their parents and grandparents, evidently, into the fold. All told, it sold well over 10 million units, becoming the fastest-selling single-console game in history. After all this time, my old friend, and the form in which he was almost most comfortable, was still the gold standard. Deservedly so. In the wake of NSMBWII's success, the Mario
Hey,
merchandise market exploded in a way it never had when I was young enough to have justifiably gorged upon it. High-quality Mario toys are a common sight all over, and I, 60, Bob Chipman, won't pretend I don't have a few choices decorating my home right now. Oh, speaking of homes, as Mario was settling back onto his throne, things were turning around for me as well. My hard work for The Escapist and Screw Attack had started to pay off in numbers that allowed me to quit my retail work entirely and devote even more time to my criticism and video making. I'm now what's called an e-celebrity, of sorts. Though the idea of it still feels strange to me, at any moment, I expect someone to.
Dude, you aren't any celebrity. You're a lol cow. And your videos don't get very many views. Like Movie Bob's movie reviews get about 10 to 20,000. Sometimes a little bit higher per video, which is really nothing. Um Given that he does this full time.
To leap from the shadows and cry that man is no professional commentator. He's fraud. I speak on panels at PAX East. I went to Seattle for the Independent Game Developers Conference. I trekked to North Carolina for the Escapist's debut expo. And I'm now making plans to head back to Texas for Screw Attack's Revive convention. I even made enough money sustainably to finally move out of my family's house into a place of my own, a life transition that spurred me to buckle down and write the playthrough portion of this book. So, it's not just a retrospective of Super Mario Bros. 3, but a record of my last time playing it from start to.
Okay, so Movie Bob has, I think, 27,000 followers on Twitter, which is like nothing for somebody who's as well known as him. Now, to be fair, Movie Bob does have a very robust Patreon. He does get $3,800 Canadian a month. Really? Wow. I mean, actually, you know what? That's actually not that good. I mean, that would be good for me. Like, if I was getting that in addition to my salary, I'd be fucking set. But I guess if that's his main source of money, that's really not that good then.
To finish in the home where I'd played it for the first time. Moving into a home of my own, well, an in-law apartment in Revere, technically, was a mildly chaotic experience, not in the least because Evangeline, Vange, my beloved last living grandparent, passed away only a few days before my move was scheduled. I was determined not to draw the process out to get as much of my gear, particularly my bed and the video making equipment for what were by now 4 or 5 separate web shows, installed in the new place as possible on the first day, which ultimately led to a set of nice sleepless days worth of furniture assembly, shelf construction, equipment testing, and general new life building. Part of that meant frequently heading back home to dig out as many usable items as I could from my closets and drawers. I found a lot of suddenly useful random items, extension cords, USB cables, twist ties, batteries, but also a lot of lost keys.
So I'm gonna say this. I'm not gonna make fun of him for the fact that he lived with his parents. Because honestly, I lived with my parents off and on until I was like 30. It's not like I think there's a difference between living with your parents as a way to save money and doing it because you're lazy. Like I think it's different if you're working a full time job or you're going to school or something like that. And because housing's expensive and just doing that because you're a loser. I think for Movie Bob, it was more the former, is that he was doing his shitty videos and working at like Blockbuster and getting fired from it. So
Keepsakes to take with me because, well, you know, during one such plunge, I retrieved a set of large but not very heavy boxes.
it's one of the things about Anglo culture I find really annoying. The whole like, oh, you have to kick your kids out when they're 18 and they have to like just survive and they die in the street if they can't. I mean, if your kids are in their like 20s and they're not actively trying to do something, then yeah, but
Boxes and felt a powerful sense of what they contained before
maybe that's just cope for how I spent my 20s.
opening a single one. But open them I did, and inside I found my childhood, the games. My games. The boxes contained nearly everything that had survived from my earlier days of gaming, stacks of NES, SNES, N64, and Dreamcast games, plus the corresponding consoles, controllers and other equipment. At the very bottom, in true dramatic fashion, was my original NES, a little faded for the wear, but otherwise as immediately recognizable as the day I'd first hooked it up. In a separate area I found, this time very intentionally, my worn end, 61, Super Mario Bros. 3, brick by brick well-read first issue of Nintendo Power, which turned out to be an omen of sorts as the sad announcement that the magazine would cease publication for good came only a few months later. Issue number 1 now hangs, framed, on my wall.
I'm gonna be honest, the news that Nintendo Power, I hadn't subbed to it in years, but the news that Nintendo Power was being discontinued was legitimately, um, like that actually really made me sad. Um, that happened. Let me see if I can pull it up. Uh, I actually really like. Let me just find the comic from it. Let's see here. So this was the final page of the final issue of Nintendo Power, which I think it kind of reminds me of the Q scenes that you had in The World Is Not Enough that were kind of the perfect send off for the character. So we had Nestor. Let's just read this together. I can't. It's the text doesn't stand up very well. Then none of this is really going away, is it? I mean, Nintendo powered a great run, and you've got it all right here. It's like you said when you finish a great game. You're kind of sad to see it end, but you're really proud and happy too. You know what I see when I look at the final issue? 100% completion. I'm not gonna lie. When I read that for the first time, I actually got a tear in my eye. So I do actually think that that's a very positive way to look at things ending, even things that you really enjoy. And then it goes, "Come on, Dad, let's go play some new Super Mario Brothers U. You got it. Think we could get some platforms to help me pass those pits again. I won't let you fail, Dad." And then they just leave all the Nintendo Power stuff behind. But I don't know. I thought that was a very cute, sweet way of ending it. And I mean, it is true. It's don't look at it as a failure that it went away. Look at it as a success for how long it lasted and for what it meant for tens of millions of kids all over the world. So, anyways.
Wall, but the games. I resolved immediately that those devices would live again, and immediately put the rest of my homemaking on hold while I set about doing just that. With the half-constructed skeletons of seemingly more important accoutrements of living leaned against walls, their construction on hold, I spent a night cleaning cartridges and connections with rubbing alcohol and Q-tips and a day teaching myself how to disassemble an NES to replace its connector pins. The SNES and other machines did not, thankfully, require that level of repair. I tested every game and, afterwards, played my original copy of Super Mario Bros. 3 on my original NES. And just like that, my new apartment became home. As of this writing, Nintendo has just released the Wii U, an HD follow-up to the Wii, once again based around a new type of controller, an oversized gamepad with an onboard touchscreen. The system's launch a major event, given that its arrival marks the start of the 8th generation of consoles was built around two flagship Nintendo-published titles. One is Nintendo Land.
But once again, I know it's really like G-slur and lame and millennial to say it, but I do think that is like a legitimate good point to look at happy times that have come to an end as 100% completion, that you finished, that you won, rather than it failed, that you couldn't keep it going forever, because things don't last forever, but try to remember the good times.
Nintendo Land, a theme park game built to demonstrate the versatility of the gamepad. Good game, even great in spots. But it's not the one they're using to sell the system in ads. No, the task has fallen to New Super Mario Bros. U, which is exactly what it sounds like it is. It's been over 25 years since the original Super Mario Bros. Turned the original Nintendo Entertainment System into a worldwide phenomenon that changed the history of entertainment and my life in particular. And, 25 years later, a 2D Super Mario Bros. Side-scroller is carrying the banner for the new generation. Mario is still here, so am I. I'd like to think that if possible we would thank one another for that. Epilogue, believe it or not.
Oh, it's so cringe. We're almost to the actual
Wii U I
book.
purchased on launch day was defective. Not great news, but we deal with what we must. I decided that it would be faster to track down a new one than to send it for repairs and spent the next few days showing up at electronics stores early in the morning hoping they'd been restocked. I eventually won out by joining up with a Black Friday line, 62, Bob Chipman, and frankly being lucky.
What are the odds that this like piece of shit like just spilled something on his Wii U or otherwise destroyed it?
Lucky. However, on one of the non-eventful days I had an encounter that stuck with me and probably will for a while. I was standing in the November cold outside of a local Target whose website had listed Wii as being in stock. Having worked in retail for so long, I knew that could be misleading. More likely than not, they'd misscanned the pre-orders they were still holding for customers. This was only 2 days post-launch, as general stock. That turned out to be the case, incidentally. But it was still worth a shot.
Anyone remember back when pre-orders were a thing? Like non-digital ones, and like it was a big deal because they would always run out of games and stuff like that, and they used to give out like the pre-order bonuses, and they'd be like actual pre-order bonuses like art books or posters or figurines or stuff like that. That was awesome.
Shot. After about 20 minutes of waiting, I was joined by another pair of early birds, a young mother and her 2 children. One was a boy of about 6 or 8, and the other was a toddler whose gender was undeterminable as she was wrapped in a solid cocoon of winter wear and cradled against their mom's shoulder. I got the sense that
Did movie Bob just assume their gender?
We may have been there for the same thing, they likely picking up a pre-order, me hoping there was stock beyond the pre-orders, and I could tell this despite the fact that we only said hello to one another, not by some psychic intuition, I stress, but because the boy was making it pretty clear, he was excitable to the point of bouncing, and his attire told the rest of the tale. Mario t-shirt, Mario baseball cap, Mario backpack, even Mario sneakers. The kid was a walking advertisement for an SMBWI era Mario. I looked down at him, smiled, nodded. He looked up at me, realizing, before I did, honestly, that I also happened to be wearing a Mario shirt, one from my era, SMB2 character select screen, to be precise, with a look of quizzical surprise. This big older guy knows Mario, too? Yes I do, kid. Yes I do, suddenly.
Or he was just afraid that... I'm not even going to make that as a joke, but you can guess.
Suddenly, I felt better about the likelihood I wouldn't find a Wii U of my own that day. Part of that phantom stock waiting inside could well have been this kid's pre-order, and between me getting mine and him getting his, he can have it. Mario belongs to him more than he belongs to me, even if I've known him longer, because Mario, and games, and the very act of play, fundamentally belong more to the young. That's not to say they can't also be part of an adult life, it's simply to say that what is.
That's so, that's sad. Like, that is his attempt to be profound.
Is. I am the man I am for many reasons, because of my parents, my grandparents, my friends and family. But also because of Mario, whose adventures filled my lonelier hours, fueled my dreams, gave me a note and consequential sense of stability, and in a manner I never would have expected led me on a twisting, roundabout path to my own career and prosperity.
Is this like the biggest argument to not? This book, like, I feel like this should be used, made into a movie, like, to teach kids not to play video games. Base Caulfield, I was actually hoping you'd show up for this part. Because isn't this kind of like the what you put it, the worst advertisement
Prosperity.
for video games ever?
I wouldn't dream of denying that kid to possibly have the same grand adventure, and I can only hope that Mario was as good a friend to him as he was to me. And so, in addition to writing this book for myself, for people like me, 63, Super Mario Brothers. 3. Brick by brick for game designers and developers and journalists and anyone else who'd been looking as I was for a book that looked at a game, and at gaming, in this way. I also write it for that kid. For all the kids like him, who know Mario and game.
Save the kids, guys. Movie Bob's gonna save the kids with Brick by Brick.
And games now and might find interest, intrigue, or benefit in knowing what came before. I'd like to imagine that someday, somewhere.
It's so cringe what came before. The time before the good old days. Reject modernity, return to tradition. Is this like the Gen X version of reject modernity, return to tradition?
Somewhere, a copy of this book will be picked up by a young Mario fan who had never considered that their hobby could hold deeper truths.
I don't know about that, man. That implies anyone actually bought this book.
Truths, or be looked at as an object of art and meaning. And that it will let them appreciate it all the more. 64, part.
Okay, I think we're going to get to the actual book now. Okay. When does it actually get to brick by brick? What the fuck? He still takes, like... Okay, well, we'll eventually get to brick by brick. We're going to start Movie Bob's walkthrough. So we'll see how that goes. Okay. Nintendo should have sued him for this, for slander.
It's my intention that the main playthrough portion of this book read as much as possible as a narrative instead of a strategy guide.
Okay, I will say this. Honestly, like, I'm making fun of it. It's not that bad a book. Like, I'm not bored reading through this. It's cringy and funny, but it's not unreadable. I've read way worse stuff than this.
Checklist. As such, while there will certainly be digressions into certain elements of particular note, important characters making a first
like, it's bad, but it's funny bad, and like entertaining bad. It's not so bad, it's terrible.
First appearance, the first use of certain mechanics or design styles, it's simply not feasible to take time and space to explain the appearance of each block, enemy and sound effect as they each first appear.
I thought you said this was brick by brick. And now we're saying it's not going to be brick by brick? You failed the shitty premise of this book?
Otherwise, roughly the first half of the analysis would be a nightmare of constant asides and footnotes. No fun for me to write and certainly a chore for you to read. On the one hand, That's perhaps not something I should be too concerned with, since the target audience for a book of this type can be safely assumed to have a comfortable familiarity with the subject, that is. If you've read this far, you probably don't need to be told what a Goomba is. However, since keeping everyone on the same page and having a solid on-hand reference is unquestionably a good idea, it'll be the purpose of this section to name, identify, and describe the various pieces that make up Super Mario Bros. 3. The basics, Super Mario Bros.
I mean, to to at least give Movie Bob a little bit of credit, he did actually write the book. He did write the book. He finished it. He published it on Amazon. He probably regretted it later on and thought it was cringy, which is how I felt for my book as well. But it's he put himself out there and he actually did finish something. So, I mean, credit where credit's due.
3 Inches was developed as a first-party title by Nintendo EAD Entertainment, Analysis and Development, with Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi credited as its primary designers and Koji Kondo as the composer of its score. It was first released in Japan for the Nintendo Famicom console in 1988 and then in the United States for the Nintendo Entertainment System, NES, in 1990, with a European PAL release 1 year after that. All 3 versions were originally published on game cartridges designed to interface with their respective consoles. The story, from the original NES game manual, the Mushroom Kingdom has been a peaceful place thanks to the brave deeds of Mario and Luigi. The Mushroom Kingdom forms an entrance to the Mushroom World where all is not well. Bowser has sent his 7 children to make mischief as they please in the normally peaceful Mushroom World. They stole the magic wands from each country in the Mushroom World and used them to turn their kings into animals. Mario and Luigi must recover the royal magic wands from Bowser's 7 kids to return the kings to their true forms. Goodbye and good luck, said the princess and Toad as Mario and Luigi set off on their journey deep into 66. Bob Chipman. The Mushroom World, War and Peace it isn't, but just the basic storylines were par for the course in this era of gaming. Even still, it provides a bigger picture of the Mario universe than had previously been established. This is the first mention that the Mushroom Kingdom is only one part of a larger world, primarily, but it also
We're getting into Mario lore now.
It also establishes that the starting point this time around has not quite settled into the Peach always gets kidnapped groove it would in subsequent games, while the princess does indeed wind up abducted at the beginning of World 8. The main story of the game has her in the role of commander, dispatching the Mario brothers to the 7 kingdoms to deal with Bowser's assault.
So it's actually a feminist game.
Assault, in fact, given that both sides of the conflict are delegating the warfighting to subordinates this time around. SMB3 marks the first clear delineation of the Troopa Mushroom conflict as a long-term military conflict rather than mere isolated attacks by Bowser.
Where's my Mario Grand Strategy game? Where's like Mushroom Kingdom Wars? Like we need a grand strategy game where like you can maybe like an Age of Empires style thing where you can play as the Mushroom Kingdom or the Koopas or the Kongs or I don't know, somebody else. Like why hasn't this been made? Give me a Mario Total War. That's what we need. Fuck Hyrule Total War. We need Mario Total War.
Bowser. Left unmentioned in the written story but implicit in the game itself is that Bowser has amassed a mechanized military force for this particular engagement, outfitting his children with heavily armed airships and protecting his own kingdom with tanks, jets, and battleships. The characters, interestingly, the original manual for SMB3 refers to all sentient creatures in the game, including enemies, as characters. While you'll find a list of said enemy characters further ahead in this section, these are the players whose presence is vital to what exists of the game's narrative. Mario, assuming you haven't skipped ahead to this part, he should be rather familiar to you by now. The main character of the series, Mario, is a plumber, possibly native to Brooklyn, New York, who has traveled to and become a hero in the alternate.
He's trying to slip it back in. He's trying to like cope for the whole thing that no, Mario's actually from Brooklyn. Mario isn't from the Mushroom Kingdom.
Alternate universe of the Mushroom Kingdom. Depicted in the game, and elsewhere, as a husky-built Italian-American man with a large mustache, wearing a red hat and blue overalls over a red shirt. Luigi, Mario's brother, Luigi is depicted outside the games as being taller than Mario with a slimmer build but appears in the game proper as looking identical save for swapping green for red clothing choices. Princess Peach, also known as Princess Toadstool, the main, though, as of this game, no longer sole, female figure of the Mario franchise. Peach is the ostensible ruler of the Mushroom Kingdom. Depicted in outside game media as sporting long orange hair, she here appears as a brunette in SMB3 owing to the reuse of a sprite from the second game. Prior to 67, Super Mario Bros. 3, Brick by Brick, 1997 Super Mario.
I kind of want to try playing the Princess Peach Showtime game at some point. It doesn't sound like it's really worth buying, but it looks kind of fun, at least for a couple hours.
Mario 64. Western translations referred to her surname as Toadstool. Toad, Princess Peach's perennial assistant sidekick. Toad is taken to be typical in appearance to the other mushroom people populating the kingdom. In SMB3, such figures appear multiple times throughout the game, though it's not made 100% clear if each appearance is meant to be Toad himself or multiple mushroom persons. Bowser, the principal antagonist of the Mario franchise. Bowser is the leader of a race of antagonistic turtle-like creatures called Koopas, apparently at perpetual war with the Mushroom Kingdom and Princess Peach in particular. Bowser is larger than the rest of his species, with bull-like horns, a mane of red hair and a spike-covered shell. Though he doesn't display propensity for it in this game, he, and his children, are described elsewhere as magic users in addition to a natural ability for breathing fire. The Koopalings, Bowser 7, later 8, children, mother officially unknown. They bear familial resemblance to their father but have distinguishing features, primarily in the area of hair color and clothing/jewelry. Full descriptions of each are included here as part of the playthrough section proper, but their names Larry, Lemmy, Iggy, Roy, Morton, Ludwig and Wendy are predominantly puns on the names of famous musicians and or celebrities. Version specifics. For the purposes of writing this book, the version of the game played was a port of the original NES version downloaded to a Nintendo Wii through the Virtual Console download service. It provides a version identical in graphics and programming to the...
Whoa, so he didn't even play it on his NES? He went through that big thing about how he repaired his NES, he took it apart, he replaced the connector pins, and he had his original copy of Mario. He didn't even do that? This whole thing he played on the fucking Virtual Console? What a ripoff.
The original NES release, save for the fact that the Wii can be switched off and the game resumed later so long as you exit the game in progress before turning the system off. Otherwise, it is a faithful port of the game's original 1990 US release, played using a Wii remote turned on its side, a style which effectively mimics the basic setup of an NES controller. Basic visual terminology, SMB3.
Except shittier in every way.
SMB3 is an 8-bit game, which refers to the programming and space limitations available to the programmers in terms of graphics and sound. The NES and its games were designed to output audio and visuals primarily to the standard definition analog television sets of the day, circa 1989. The game, 68, Bob Chipman screen was a grid made up of tiny single-color squares called pixels, which were used to render all of the visual elements in the game. All individual elements and objects made from said pixels are technically called sprites, though, for purposes of clarity, non-moving or non-interactive elements are sometimes referred to separately as scenery or backdrops. Basic game terminology, the sprite controlled by the player, Mario in the context of the single-player analogy.
Oh no, there's nothing wrong with the Virtual Console. It's just that he had this massive thing about how he cleaned up his NES and this was going to be his authentic experience. No, or maybe you're saying the Virtual Console release. I just think that the Wii controller sucks playing it on its side. It's just very uncomfortable to hold. That's just my issue with it.
Single-player analysis. Mario or Luigi in a two-player game is typically called the player, though for purposes of this writing may alternately be referred to as Mario or as a personification of the player author himself. Read, me. Sprites representing creatures meant to serve as living obstacles to the player achieving his goals are enemies. Sprites representing objects that are useful or beneficial to Mario once acquired are called items, while items that cause a beneficial physical change in Mario are separately designated power-ups. Layout. The game is divided into 8 worlds, each containing a set of numbered levels and other destinations. Each world is named either for its dominant geo.
Well, as I said, like, I could probably, if I really wanted to, write a book about Alpha Centauri, like the game. I don't think I'd necessarily need pictures for that. You could just describe stuff, but this is a very visual thing. This is not like an intellectual, thematic, I don't know.
Geographic or aesthetic feature. The names of each world differ from version to version. Here the names associated with the original NES release are used, while each level is identified by the number of its world and then its own numerical designation. For example, Level 4 of World 3 is called Level 4-3. For the purposes of this playthrough, destinations which are not specifically numbered levels are referred to by the number of their world and said destination's actual identity. For example, Level 2 Fortress. Game modes. Super Mario Bros. 3 inches has 3 separate modes of play and or interaction. The main mode is the actual playing of the levels, see, gameplay, below, and the secondary mode is the map screen, an overhead map of levels and other destinations viewed from overhead that the player uses to navigate from one point to the next. The third, Battle Mode, is accessible only in a two-player game and is a recreation of the original Mario Bros. Game. Occurs whenever the two players occupy the same spot on the map screen and decides which player will take the next turn. The third, Battle Mode, 69, Super Mario Bros. 3. Brick by Brick is accessible only in a two-player game and is a recreation of the original Mario Bros. Game. It occurs whenever one of the players chooses to stop on the other player's spot on the map screen instead of choosing a normal level. Battle Mode allows the players to steal mushroom, flower, and star cards from each other, which are acquired from beating levels. The winner of the match gets the next turn. Gameplay. Levels. SMB3's primary gameplay builds on the foundation set down by the original Super Mario Bros. In terms of genre referred to as a 2D side-scrolling platformer. Its visuals are presented in 2 dimensions. All sprites can either move up, down, left or right under various circumstances but not into or out of the background in any meaningful way. The illusion of movement and or travel is created mainly by having stationary scenery and visuals scroll left or right with.
Oh no, I mean, you guys, you have no idea how bad it's going to be. So if you go back and you look, my original endure of this was only like 3 hours long, because the rest of this book is literally him going brick by brick. And I know I complained that I wanted to get to this part, but I didn't want to get to this
with
part.
Mario remaining more or less in the center. Also, the ability to jump either over pits or onto platforms at higher or lower levels of the screen is a fundamental mechanic. The very bottom of the game screen is occupied by the status bar, which displays the following information clockwise starting from the top left: the number of the current world, the speed meter, also known as P-meter, the number of coins collected, the time remaining in the current play session, the total score, and the remaining number of lives. All interaction is based on the control of Mario or Luigi by the player using an NES controller. Note, in the case of this writing, the game was played using a Wii Remote, which is fundamentally analogous to a standard NES controller. When using said controller, the cross-shaped D-pad controller's horizontal, vertical and, where applicable, diagonal movement, while the A button, 2 on a Wii Remote, causes Mario to jump. The B button, I on a Wii Remote, is multifunctional. Holding it down while moving left or right makes Mario run rather than walk and will enable him to grab certain items and stunned enemies, primarily Troopas or Buzzy Beetles who've retreated into their shells, and carry them. In addition, B is used to fire projectiles when powered up as either Fire Mario or Hammer Mario. Holding the down button will make Mario crouch when in his big or super form and is also used to enter pipes, while up is tapped to enter doors. Additionally, the A button is used for swimming, except when using a frog suit, whenever Mario becomes submerged in water above his head, and for flying while using the Raccoon Mario or Tanuki suit power-ups. 70. Bob Chipman. Within each level, Mario begins, in whichever form he entered from the map screen, with a set amount of time to reach the goal at the end, which is represented by a space of black backdrop. Said goal also contains a block that displays rapidly rotating cards of either a flower, mushroom or star icon. If Mario collects a matching set of 3 cards, he is rewarded with a fireworks display and a set of extra lives, 1-ups, which we'll get to in a moment. While traveling through levels, the objective is to reach the goal without being killed and sent back to the map screen. Such deaths coming from collision with an enemy projectile, lethal hazard, spikes, lava, or falling into a pit. Death is instant from hits while Mario is in a standard or small form, while most hits taken while super or otherwise powered up will simply revert you to the next less powerful form. Lava and pits, however, are instant killers no matter what form you are in. Items found inside blocks within levels are exclusively of the power-up variety. If Mario in a small form, the power-up will always be a mushroom first, while the contents of blocks otherwise are fixed. A block programmed to house a flower will always house a flower, unless it is struck by small Mario, in which case it will yield a mushroom. The exception to this rule is the Starman power-up, which can be used by either Small or Super Mario and will occupy its designated block regardless. Also, some levels feature blocks which will produce a Starman only when struck by Mario.
I'm sure most of us here have played a Mario game or at least seen one. Can you imagine like reading this and never having seen one in person and trying to like imagine this shit? It's nuts.
Mario when he is already using a previous Starman. Items found inside treasure chests, whether encountered in levels or otherwise, are sent to the player's map screen item inventory. See below. Gameplay. Map screen. The layout of each world and its levels are represented by a map screen, which presents said world in a stylized overhead view of its terrain. Each area, level, and/or scenario that can be entered is represented on the map by an icon, which typically disappear or change shape when they have been explored, used, or cleared. These icons are connected by set paths, the arrangement of which governs the whole of the player's movement on the map. In a 2-player game, level panels, see below, become either an M or I logo when conquered, depending on who completed the level. The status bar from the levels remains at the bottom, but pressing the B button causes the bar to flip over and reveal an inventory that stores items and power-ups retrieved from treasure chests, won in games of chance, or gotten from a mushroom house. From this inventory, the player can either 71. Super Mario Bros. 3. Brick by brick utilize items on the map screen itself or arm themselves with power-ups before heading into a level. Map screen elements. Airship. Airship levels, the final level of each of the first 7 worlds, start automatically after Mario visits a castle. If he fails to bring the ship down on the first attempt, an icon representing it will become visible on the map and fly to a different location, moving again after each attempt until it is conquered. If it retreats to a path blocked by a previously undefeated level, said level must be beaten first.
Yeah, this is the description of it. Movie Bob feeling extra felted right now. I'm sorry, I don't have a lot to say. We'll I'll talk more once we get to
boulder,
it.
large lumpy rocks, usually tan-orange in color but sometimes recolored to the theme of an individual world's map, that block Mario's way through a path. Typically,
I think the most surreal thing about this is that it's 100% serious. Like, this isn't a joke. This isn't a parody. This isn't like him trying to be ironic. This is honestly what he came up with. He's actually going through and describing every aspect of Super Mario Bros. 3. It's so weird.
Typically, They are placed to obstruct shortcuts or areas of desire such as red mushroom houses or warp pipes, see below. They can be destroyed with the hammer item, castle. The goal of each world is to reach the castle, wherein resides that world's transformed king. Despite their size, the castles are not levels in end of themselves. We only ever see the throne rooms, but rather serve as the trigger that begins the airship level. Hammer Brothers, Worlds 1 through 6 feature icons of Hammer Brothers, sometimes referred to as wandering Hammer Brothers that travel the map screen's paths in semi-random patterns. Colliding with them while on the map screen triggers a single screen battle against one or more Hammer Brothers, played like a level, for which Mario will earn a treasure chest containing a preset item. The music box item, when used on the map screen, puts the Hammer Brothers to sleep and allows Mario to bypass them safely for a time. In certain worlds, a secret trick can be executed which will transform Hammer Brothers into treasure ships, see below. Level panels, as viewed from the map screen, levels are represented by numbered panels. The majority of each world's levels must typically be cleared in order to gain access to a world's castle, which initiates the airship level that concludes each world, save for the World 8. However, owing to the arrangement of paths on a given map, some levels can be bypassed. Locked gate, huge golden doors with large keyholes on them that block your path much the same way that boulders.
Dude, is this like a choose your own adventure story? Is this a text? He turned Mario into a text-based game? Like what is this? I still can't believe this was actually written.
That boulders do, save that there are no items which can destroy a gate. Instead, they vanish once a certain area elsewhere on the map, usually a fortress, has been completed. Mushroom House, also called Toad Houses, as there are some. 72. Bob Chipman lack of clarity as to whether each mushroom person Mario encounters in this game, it's never more than one at a time, is supposed to be Toad the individual character or different folks of the same species. In any case, these are depicted as large mushrooms with doors and come in either yellow, red, blue, or white. Yellow, red, or blue mushroom houses contain a set of 3 identical treasure chests containing 3 different items, from which Mario is invited to choose one upon entering. White mushroom houses contain the game's rare items and are invisible on the map screen.
How much money do I think he made off of this? I don't think he made any money. I think he lost money on this. I think he lost money in his soul, his sense of self-respect.
Screen, appearing only when certain numbers of coins are collected in certain levels. Piranha Plant, in World 7, large, stationary piranha plants take the place of wandering Hammer Brothers as the map screen enemies. They don't move from their set spot, and touching them triggers a short level in which Mario must cross a vast field of plant-infested pipes. The music box can put them to sleep, as well. Spade panel, S, white panels with a black playing card spade symbol. Touching one takes Mario to a casino where a mushroom person, generally assumed to be Toad, gives you a chance to play a slot machine-style picture-matching game with 1-ups as the prize. In addition, there are N spade panels, identical to the normal ones, but with a letter N emblazoned on the spade, which appear every time you earn 80,000 total points and lets you play a card-matching memory game. There are 8 possible arrangements of cards, and once you've begun turning over the cards correctly, you get 2 turns. That arrangement will remain in place each time you visit again until you've completed.
I will say this game is actually quite complicated compared to Mario Brothers 2. Like, they did add in a lot of stuff. I will say that.
Completed the whole thing. Treasure ship, the rarest occurrence in the game. Treasure ships appear in the place of Hammer Brothers on the map screens of levels 1, 3, 5, or 6 if a level is completed with the coins total as a multiple of 11, the tens place of the score matching said multiple of 11, and the timer stopped on an even number. The ships appear on the map as pure white sailing vessels with the Japanese kanji character for treasure on their sails, but resemble airships filled with coins when played through. They are captained by a pair of Boomerang Brothers. Warp pipes. Pipes appearing on the map screen are used to navigate from one spot on the map to another. Usually, one or both pipes are blocked off by a boulder or gate, but since removed obstacles remain gone after game over, these pipes can often be useful in avoiding having to play through every level again. Miscellaneous. In addition to these map screen constants, certain screens. 73. Super Mario Bros. 3. Brick-by-brick feature elements, like the pyramid and quicksand areas in World 2 or the tower in World 5, that are unique to those areas. World 8, Bowser's Kingdom, has only 2 traditional levels and is otherwise populated by unique elements such as these items. Items in Mario games refer to any collectible object or icon that can change the player's status, grant them in-game abilities, or allow them to perform tasks not otherwise possible. In SMB3 they come in 2 distinct forms: power-ups that grant Mario temporary enhanced abilities, either in the form of a physical transformation and/or power-granting suit, and single-use tools made to be used on the map screen. 1-up, a green mushroom that instantly grants an extra life. Anchor, activating an anchor while on the map screen causes the airships to remain in one place rather than traveling across the map after each failed turn. Fire Flower, a staple of the Mario franchise since the first SMB, fire flowers enable Mario or Luigi to throw fireballs from their fingertips. The color design of the flowers and the color change of Mario's clothing signifying that a flower is in use change from game to game, usually involving a red and white color scheme, but in SMB3 the flowers are blue-green and the player sprite turns fiery orange, red and yellow. Lockita's Cloud, used only on the map screen. A commandeered Lockita Cloud allows Mario to skip over a single level without playing through it. This is the first Mario game where the clouds can be used by the player. In Super Mario World it would become possible to do so in level gameplay. Leaf, also called the Super Leaf, Tanuki Leaf, or Raccoon Leaf. The leaf causes Mario to sprout the ears and tail of a raccoon, which gives him the ability to slow his descent after a jump, swat enemies and blocks with the tail, and to fly short distances by running until the speed meter is full. This is the signature power-up of SMB3 and arguably the most iconic Mario power-up outside of those originating in the first SMB. Mushroom, Flower and Star. Frog Suit, a frog costume. Mario's head sticks out through the mouth of the head, that grants high jumping abilities and allows for multi-directional and more powerful swimming while underwater, but impedes walking somewhat while on land. The more common of the game's 274 Bob Chipman animal-themed suits. Hammer, not to be confused with the hammer suit. The hammer is usable only on the map screen for the purpose of smashing boulder obstacles. Hammer suit, a set of armor in the style of the Hammer Brothers that lets Mario throw a volley of hammers and become effectively invincible while crouching. The most rarely found power-up in the game, it also marks the first time that Mario was able to adopt the weapon's powers of an enemy.
Yeah, it's the first time. It was a big moment in history.
Mushroom, also called Super Mushrooms and Shrooms, the original and most iconic by far Super Mario Bros. Power-up transforms Mario from his default, also known as small or mini form, to the larger Super Mario form. Depicted as yellow with red spots in the original SMB, it appears here for the first time with visible eyes in the red-white colors first seen in the US. SMB2, Music Box, the item that, when activated on the map screen, puts wandering Hammer Brothers to sleep for a short period, allowing the player to pass safely. P-Wing, the most powerful and sought-after of all SMB3's power-ups. The P-Wing, despite its name and visual depiction as a white...
No, Brian, this was supposed to be like an experimental attempt at copying a film shot-by-shot remake guide where he goes through every aspect of it. I don't even know. You know what? I don't really understand. I don't even really get what the point of this was. Maybe someone in this can put in the chat like what they think he was trying to accomplish with this, because I still don't know.
A white bird's wing gives Mario the same abilities as the leaf but with unlimited flying ability, making it the only way to explore every inch of every level in the game. If you restart a new game after defeating Bowser without resting or powering off the NES, you'll start World 1 with your inventory completely filled by these. Starman, also called Superstar, Invincibility Star, or Simple Star, Starman has been part of Mario lore since SMB and was originally the only power-up to be depicted as being in some way sentient. While stars have taken on multiple other roles in later Mario installments, here it works the same as it did in the original.
I still think to this day, and no one can convince me otherwise, that this book was like a desperate cry for help. This was Movie Bob saying that, like, my life sucks. I'm a failure. My parents hate me. I have nothing to live for. Somebody please help me. And this came out, and then nobody gave a shit, so he just went back to doing his movie reviews. That's my guess as to what happened. Or this was a suicide note, and this was like trying to tell everybody like that he was going to do himself in, but then nobody cared, so he just went back to what he was doing before.
Original, granting Mario temporary invincibility. New to this game, it also increases his relative speed and changes the jump animation to an aerial somersault. Tanuki suit, a Tanuki costume that grants all of the powers of Raccoon Mario but also the ability to transform into an immobile but invulnerable statue. Discussed in greater detail in the playthrough proper, Tanukis are raccoon-like mammals native to Japan. In Japan, both this form and Raccoon Mario are both referred to as Tanuki, that figure prominently in
Dude, but like, if, as I said, if your son came to you and said, "Hey, Dad, I want to write like I want to write a book called Brick by Brick, and it's going to be about how much of a loser I was growing up," and then going on like and writing this shit out, I would be afraid to. I'd probably try to get them committed.
traditional Shinto folklore. Their iconic presence here represents the most explicit of the rare instances in which the Mario games have openly embraced iconography of the Japanese culture from which they originate. 75. Super Mario Bros. 3.
We need a Chris Chan book. Like a spin by spin or ring by ring. We need a Chris Chan autobiography about Sonic the Hedgehog.
3. Brick by Brick Whistle, also referred to as the flute or recorder. This is a woodwind instrument that summons a magic tornado that takes Mario to the Warp Zone Island, from which he can skip worlds in much the same manner as similar hidden zones in the previous SMB titles. 3 whistles can be found throughout the game, and if a second whistle is used while Mario is already at the Warp Zone, he will be transported directly to World 8. Of special note, the whistle's design, the tune it plays and the tornado it summons are references to a near-identical totem found in the original Legend of Zelda game, making this both the first instance of self-aware humor and comic reference to another game in a Mario title, which later became a staple of the franchise. Blocks. While the terrain and background designs from SMB2 onward are often rendered to disguise this fact, the level layout of the Super Mario Bros. Side-scrollers essentially takes the form of a loose grid, with almost all interactive sprites being measurable in terms of blocks, which are used as the building materials of almost every structure in the game save for the ground terrain. While some blocks are found sitting on the ground, the majority hover in mid-air. In addition, blocks will often be invisible until struck from below. Whereas the first SMB built its world from only a handful of blocks, SMB3 introduced the greatest variety seen in the series to that point. This game is also the first to allow Mario to directly strike blocks from the side by using the raccoon or tanuki tail attacks. Bricks, also called brick blocks, in many ways bricks and...
Finally getting to the bricks. The brick, because this story is brick by brick.
Bricks and Mario's ability to smash them from below with his fists are one of the signature
Can you imagine, like, sitting here and writing this? And once again, we're not even halfway through this book yet, or we're maybe about halfway through this book. But can you imagine sitting here and writing this entire thing out? It's fucking, like, it blows my mind.
signature aesthetic devices of the series, along with the rudimentary elements of puzzle
I think the fact that this is all just completely sincere and he's actually trying makes this whole thing weirder. Like, it's just, I don't know.
puzzle platforming they introduced. If you destroy them, you can't use them as platforms anymore. The simple visual of
This feels like something somebody would make in like maybe 2003, but he did this in 2013, so it's really weird.
Visual of breaking bricks is the first and most basic visual indicator that Mario and Luigi are possessed of superhuman strength. Bricks can only be broken by Mario when he's in Super or some other big form. Small Mario will bounce right off of them. However, some bricks conceal items, and transform into used blocks once the item has been revealed, which can be triggered in any physical form. Cloud block, stationary clouds, the approximate size of most other blocks, which are visually identical to Lakitu's cloud but remain fixed in 76. Bob Chipman, the air to be walked on. Unlike most other blocks, while they are solid on top, Mario can pass through them from the underside. Cloud platform, a rare piece of sky terrain seen only in a few areas, slightly longer than a cloud block and rendered to look more like a natural cloud. Directional lift, orange metal platforms, 3 blocks in.
Oh boy, he's actually going through every single type of brick in the game. What the fuck is this?
In length, adorned with arrows. When stood on, they...
You know what? We need a DSP autobiography. That's what I want. Maybe, you know, like, maybe I'll go on, like, when he's streaming sometime and tell him that he should write an autobiography. I don't know if anybody's ever done that, has ever suggested that to him. Just call it The King of Hate, or maybe The King of Love. And it could just be, like, his take on all of the shit that happened. It would be amazing. You know what? I actually kind of want to do that now.
They produce a translucent copy of themselves that moves in the direction of said arrow. Multi-directional versions, with exclamation.
By the way, have you guys ever heard the King of Hate theme song? Okay. This is the DSP King of Hate song.
That's why I'm the king of hate, because I'm the king of that hatred against me. I own it. And I become a fucking powerful person when I feel motivated from people telling me that I suck and I can't do something. I wouldn't fucking be here if it weren't otherwise. In the Street Fighter community, I never would have won a tournament. In a fucking anything I ever did in my life, I never would have done anything. I am successful because of that ownership. Alright? So.
HS Tracks. I am the king of hate. 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 Cause I speak truth. I am the king of hate. Cause I'm pure fact. I am the king of hate. Watch me in the booth. Yeah, look. I came from the bottom, no slots in my pockets. In other words, fuck luck, I never really got it. I never really got shit, I always had to rock shit. Now you know why the mic is so high in the mixing. Yeah, I was told to stop by the chosen lot who wanna hold my cock, but wanna talk a lot. Yeah, that's why the fire is so high and defies the sky. When it comes out my eyes, it's on a block of lyrics on a board, on a stanza. Repeat the heat on the beat and then master. I ain't got time, you hiding the haters. When you grow nuts, come find me, see why I rise above you gamers. I'm a beast that don't cease, no peace treaty. Get a pizza treat by eating your fucking lines. When you try to battle me, rap battle the fiend that survived the fucking streets. I came back a prodigy. Yeah, I lived pain and failure, but it made me angry and gave me energy to incinerate the paper. Now overdose on reality. I can be a pharmacy, it's hard to see a young Indiana rapper going hard as me. I took the expectation of me failing and changed it. Failed the new side of Majesty. My face became the poster child of hate. Cause every motherfucker seems to have something to say. I am the king of hate. I am the king of hate.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I actually like this song. This is by a rapper called Masada. So maybe DSP's linked to the Masada.
I am the king of hate. I am the king of hate. Cause I speak truth. I am the king of hate. Cause I'm pure fact. I am the king of hate. Watch me in the booth. Yeah, look. Yeah. This ain't just a game I'm playing. It's war. Yeah. Took the reins of faith and gave save it till my storm. Yeah, cause the lightning's lighting up the light bulb. In my dome, I'm liable to get us and I turn it back on. Yeah, my jeans were filled with dreams, nothing else. Yeah, so I gotta grind cause time equals wealth. Yeah, you motherfuckers wanna play me, save it cause my gaming is hotter than Satan's toilet after eating a habanero. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's pretty jokes. It's my gaming is hotter than Satan's toilet after eating a habanero. It says because I'm pure fact. I think it's supposed to say because I'm pure fact. Sorry, it's supposed to say because I'm pure fact, but it sounds like it's saying because I'm pure fat.
I am the king of haste. I am the king of haste. I am the king of haste. I am the king of haste.
Okay. So we got that. You know what? Maybe I'll play the Kojima World Order one now. So the Kojima World Order thing, for those of you who don't know, and I know we're getting completely off topic, but there is a wrestling song called New World Order. And DSP, part of the way through his MGS1 playthrough, started... Here, I'll just play some of it.
Master level fucking programming. I love Kojima. Kojima, the master. Kojima World Order, the KWO, is in effect here. I'm joining the Kojima World Order as of right now. Everything that Kojima has made is godlike, without question. Well thought out, perfect on the satellite dish. He is Kojima, he's the best programmer. Creative director, Kojima's the godlike.
Way down. If only I had a rope.
Hollywood Kojima.
I should be able to use that rope.
Kojima.
That was the origin of the Kojima World Order and the Sons of Kojima. We're just gonna play. So somebody actually took the WWE song and put it together with DSP's vocals. So let's just listen to this briefly.
I'm joining the Kojima World Order as of right now. This is fucking horseshit.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I know that was a complete unrelated digression, but I don't know. I find Phil lore a lot more interesting than whatever the fuck this is.
Exclamation points instead of arrow icons, change their movements when Mario jumps on them. Donut lifts, blocks with holes in their center and rounded bottoms. When stood on too long, they fall off the screen. Ice bricks, also sometimes referred to as silver bricks. These are silver-colored bricks that cannot be smashed but instead can be picked up, carried and thrown like shells. They can also be used as thrown weapons by Buster Beetle enemies. Ice block, solid blocks of ice. Cannot be broken, smashed or otherwise manipulated, and are slippery to walk on. Some ice blocks contain frozen enemies or coins, which can be freed by melting them with Fire Mario's abilities. Metal block, blocks of either gray or blue hue, made from 4 inward-facing triangles. The primary building material of fortresses. Music block, white blocks decorated with black musical notes, programmed with elastic physics response that allows them to be used like springboards when jumps are timed properly. There are also rare pink music blocks, which send Mario zooming off to coin-filled cloud areas, also known as coin heaven when he jumps on them. Question block, the signature block of the Super Mario Bros. Franchise, also called mystery blocks. Metal blocks decorated with question marks, They always contain some kind of item, usually just a coin, but often an item or other useful object. Once struck, they transform into used blocks. Used block, a metal block, left as the remnant after either question blocks or special brick blocks have been struck and relieved of items or.
By the way, side note, this was one of the most Kino things Phil ever did. So briefly, he had something called the Hate Army. So it was 86. Now if it had, now the joke was that it was very close to 88. Imagine if Phil had like a jersey that said 88 Hate Army. That would have been so based. It's so cool. But if only. If only.
Items or coins. Wood block. Wood blocks are as solid and unmovable as used or metal blocks, but some of them are secretly bouncy in the manner of music blocks when struck from the sides, and they may also contain items. Wood platform. Elongated wood blocks, 3 blocks in length, often used as platforms or lifts. 77. Super Mario Bros. 3. Brick by brick. Enemies. Super Mario Bros. 3 inches featured the.
You know, I could be playing Order of Ecclesia. I could be playing Sins of a Solar Empire 2. I could be playing Ghost of Tsushima or like something good. But we're here listing to brick by brick.
Featured the largest and most varied enemy roster of the series to that date, and impressively only one of these enemies, Bob OMB, is a carryover from SMB2. Instead, the roster is filled by variations, mutations, of enemies from the original SMB and original creatures making their series debut here. With rare exception, enemies in this generation of Mario games are broken up into 4 classes of movement. The majority either move in whichever direction is forward for them until they encounter an obstacle, or a pit, or move in a preset pattern, while others possess rudimentary AI in that they chase or aim at the player sprite. Note, because translations of Japanese games and game characters were often not closely regulated by the original creators, many of the enemy characters of SMB3 have had multiple Western names throughout the years in subsequent releases. As this retrospective of the game is framed around a replaying of the original NES version, the names utilized will generally be those attached to a given character either by the original game manual or other official Nintendo documentation, except where otherwise noted. Blooper, a small, white squid known for inconvenient placement and unpredictable movement patterns, first appearing in the original SMB. While airborne versions made appearances in Japanese SMB2, the Lost Levels, SMB3's bloopers remain confined to underwater levels. Blooper Nanny, female bloopers, the majority of enemies are presumed to be male or asexual, typically referred to by male pronouns, who tow behind them a set of 4 baby bloopers, whom they then dispatch projectile style if when Mario strays too close to them. Boo, a ghost, typically found in castles and fortresses. Notably, boos are the first appearance of an explicitly spectral creature in any Mario games. While relatively few of them are encountered in this game, they've gone on to become one of the most prominent enemy types in later installments. Unlike dry bones, it is not known what, if anything, boos are the ghosts of, though their signature behavioral characteristic of only being frozen in place if Mario is looking at them, later presented as outright shyness in Super Mario World, is similar to that of various mischievous spirit figures in colloquial Japanese mythology. In the first U.S. release of the game, the manual and promotional materials referred to him as Boo Diddley, in reference to an American musician. 78. Bob Chipman, Boom Boom, the default boss of most fortresses. Boom Boom is a large, bald Koopa with a spiked shell and muscular arms. Some varieties sprout wings in place of arms after the first hit. Boom Boom bears a familial resemblance to Bowser and the Koopalings, though it's not explicitly stated what his place is in the Koopa hierarchy, or even if there is only one of him or there are multiple Boom Booms controlling each fortress. Boomerang Brothers, a variation on Hammer Brothers, see below, armed with a boomerang. While they maintain the brothers' designation of their hammer-throwing relations, They generally appear only one at a time. Bob-omb, the first, and, for a time, only, character from SMB2's Subkin universe to appear in the Mushroom Kingdom. Bob-ombs are living bombs whose fuses become lit when they are struck stunned by Mario. While they had arms and legs in SMB2, this game begins the tradition of depicting Bob-ombs as having only feet and a wind-up key in their backs, suggesting that they may be at least partially mechanical, rather than magical, in keeping with the subtle theme of Bowser as a newly mechanized threat running through SMB3. Bullet Bill, one of the series' most popular and iconic foes dating all the way back to the original SMB, Bullet Bills are living bullets. While promotional artwork had always depicted them as having cartoon-like eyeballs near the front of their shell, SMB3 is the first time that detail was explicitly rendered. Like Bob-ombs, they seem to be only partially mechanical. Buster Beetle, a faster-moving, bipedal version of Buzzy Beetles, see next entry, who are killed by stomps instead of being stunned. They are the only enemies capable of picking up and throwing ice bricks like Mario does. Buzzy Beetle, the Beetle family of enemies, are an enigmatic presence in the Mario series. While Buzzy's in-game sprite, with his head and feet being the same color, as his shell, looked something like a conventionally insectoid beetle, his appearance here and in promotional artwork depicts him as being, or at least looking like, a Koopa-style turtle who happens to have a hard, smooth shell. So precisely why he's called a beetle is anyone's guess. Functionally, he
Because beetles have hard, smooth shells?
behaves the same as a Koopa Troopa, save for being impervious to fire. Cannonball, while bullet bills have been part of Bowser's arsenal since the first game, SMB3 marks the first time he made use of conventional cannons. The first non-living munitions in the Mario series were motorized cannons in SMB2. Cannonballs are fired either...
Just think about that sentence for a minute. The first non-living munitions in the Mario series were motorized cannons in SMB2.
fired either in straight or diagonal. 79. Super Mario Bros. 3. Brick-by-brick lines, though some cannons dispense Bob-ombs instead. Chain Chomp, another enemy that may or may not be mechanical in origin. Chain Chomps are large iron balls affixed to the ground, or walls.
Remember when there was a chain chomp randomly in, what was it called again? In Link's Awakening? That was kind of strange.
Walls, by lengths of chain, which they strain against like similarly bound guard dogs. They also bark, making them the first non-boss Mario enemy to make any kind of vocal sound. Mario creator Shigeru Miyamoto is said to have based the character on a vivid memory from his childhood, wherein he was attacked by an angry dog and saved only by the dog's chain being just short enough. Cheep Cheep, fish. That's basically it. Cheep Cheeps are the main fish enemy in the Mario series, first showing up in Super Mario Bros. And a near constant ever since, save for SMB2, where there was no swimming and Trouter was the sole fish nemesis. As in their initial appearance, Cheep Cheeps come in red and green and are most often found underwater, but sometimes attack by jumping into the air in the manner of flying fish. Dry Bones, the first undead figure of the Mario universe. Dry bones are animated, possibly mummified skeletons of, presumably, dead Troopas. Found in castles and fortresses mainly, they crumble into dust when stomped but will reassemble, differing from the stunned state of living Troopas in that Mario can pass through the remaining dust pile unharmed but can't kick or carry it. It's unknown what gives Dry Bones their life, but later games in the series would introduce similarly undead versions of Goombas, piranha plants, and even Bowser himself. Fire Brothers, Koopas of a similar appearance, and armor, to Hammer Brothers, though they attack with fireballs, expelled from their mouths, instead of throwing weapons. Like the boomerang variety of this type, Fire Brothers mostly appear alone despite the plural form of their name. Fire Chomp, the airborne version of a chain chomp, which flies through the air with a tail of fireballs behind it which depletes by one each time it spits fire at Mario. When the tail is gone, Fire Chomps flash red before exploding in the manner of a Bob-omb. Fire Chomps are the only enemy sprite apart from Bowser himself whose animation gives the appearance of three-dimensional movement, with its face disappearing to the rear when it turns mid-flight. Fire Snake, One of the Mario franchise's more bizarre creatures, this is a set of fireballs of varying sizes that leaps around more in the manner of a nimble caterpillar than any kind of snake. Flame jet, also called rocket engines, these are less enemies than they are physical hazards, intermittently ignited jets of flame found. 80. Bomb Chipman positioned throughout airships. They're occasionally in areas where Mario cannot even
We just take a minute and appreciate how fucking insane this is that we're still going.
go as decorations meant to suggest part of the mechanical apparatus of the ships themselves. Goomba, likely the most iconic enemy of the SMB franchise, Goombas are mushroom-shaped creatures. It is unknown whether they are themselves some kind of mushroom in the way that piranha plants are meant to be Venus flytraps, with 2 feet and no other limbs of any kind. The first enemy ever encountered in the series back in Level 1-1 of the original SMB, they return here after having been absent from SMB2. Extremely easy to kill, they generally move forward after spawning off-screen until they collide with an object or fall into a pit. Hammer Brothers, bipedal Koopas who wear armored helmets and throw volleys of hammers as weapons. The Brothers designation refers to the hammer-throwing variety, which debuted in the original SMB, almost always attacking in pairs, though it is also applied to the new species appearing first here, Fire, Sledge and Boomerang, who often appear alone. Hotfoot, a sentient candle flame that will leap from its wick, sprout feet, and pursue Mario in certain fortresses. It behaves much like Boodidley, in that it will freeze in its tracks so long as you are facing it. Jellictro, electrified jellyfish, deadly to the touch. Koopa Troopa, turtles, and the foot soldiers of Bowser's army. They come in 2 varieties, distinguished by the color of their shells. Green Troopas move forward at all times the same way Goombas do, while red Troopas are cognizant enough to turn around when they encounter a pit or the edge of a platform. Both colors also come in giant varieties in Giant Land, World 4, and behave much the same way. Koopa, the name is a riff on Kappas, mythological beings of turtle-like appearance in Japanese folklore, is presumed to refer to the whole of the enemy turtle species in the Mushroom Kingdom, with Troopa specifically being Bowser's first-line troops. Koopa Paratroopa, Troopas with wings sprouting from their shells. It is unknown whether this variation on the species is meant to be natural or if somehow the result of magical augmentation by Bowser. Green-shelled paratroopas have limited capacity for flight, mostly bouncing from place to place, while those with red shells tend to hover in place. When struck from above, they lose their wings and revert to the more familiar Troopa state. Karibo's shoe, a Goomba riding in a large, mechanized boot which can be taken over by Mario after
Okay, I think I'm done with this for today. We will continue on next time. We will continue on with more of Brick by Brick, Movie Bog's Magnum Opus, as we continue to celebrate the 10th anniversary